Good to go, Chair.
Yeah. Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Joint Standards Committee, Tuesday the 17th of September here at West Offices. We have a full complement, which I think is it's been a while since we've had a full complement, so it's good to have everybody around the table. We are joined on Zoom by Lindsay Tomlinson, who's the head of democratic governance and the deputy monitoring officer. So Lindsay, I can see you on the computer. Our colleagues can't see you, but hopefully they can hear you if you want to just say hello.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Thank you for introducing me. And members, just to apologise for not being there in person. I had intended to be, but I have been quite poorly and I did have COVID. So I'm playing safe and not spreading it around. So apologies, I would have been there in person otherwise.
Good. Had I had COVID, I wouldn't have been here either. So I would have probably come in on Zoom as well. But thank you, Lindsay. So we're going to just move straight into the agenda. Item number 1, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest at all? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Chair. I shall declare an interest in item 9 since I am involved in all the complaints.
Okay. And none others? That's good. Item number 2 is the exclusion of press and public. Again, this is just for us when we come to the private list of complaints that we'll review with the deputy monitoring officer. It's important that that's done in private. And again, just so you're aware, if you have got your salmon pink papers, please ensure that they're not open on the table until we go into a private session, because these powerful cameras are like Superman's X-ray eyes, and apparently you can see if you zoom in. So please just make sure we keep that privacy. And so that's the only item that I wanted to go into, the exclusion of press and public. So if I can just have a confirmation that we're happy to do that. Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. Moving swiftly on, we've got item number 3. It is the minutes of the last Joint Standards Committee that was held on the 23rd of July. They're on pages 3 to 6 of your agenda pack. I've had a flick through them. They seemed accurate to me, but any members have any comments, anything that we don't think is an accurate record? Yeah. So again, all happy to confirm that. Okay, there's only one thing that before we go into the next item, which is the subcommittee minutes. I just want, Lindsay, can you update us on where we are with the recruitment process for a new parish council member?
Yes, I can. Thank you. I've been off for a few weeks. In my absence, Francis Harrison and Megan Kent have been in discussion with YLCA, and YLCA have, I understand, started the process of recruiting a new parish council member. I do have the timetable. If you just bear with me, I will try and pull up the timetable that I was provided with a little earlier. I think it may have started already. Just bear with me.
Yes.
Yes. So invitations to nominate members were sent on the 4th of September. The deadline for nominations is noon on the 4th of October. If there are more than one nominations, then selection papers will be distributed on the 4th of October. And the deadline for selections will be 5 p.m. on the 4th of November. So, as I said, YLCA are undertaking that process for us, and that's already kicked off and underway. So, by the first week in November, we should have a new parish council rep.
Good, thank you. Does anyone have any questions about the process for recruitment? Just while we've got Lindsay, everyone seems to be quite comfortable with that. I mean, if you do serve on parish councils, and I know a number of us do, I have 5. I think I'm probably one of the most. Myself and Mike Waters have 5, and we've made it known to them. How many of you got, Councillor Fisher? There we go. So Rural West trumps me then. But in all seriousness, if you are if you would serve on a parish council, please do be vocal in the parish council about the process, and do encourage any of your colleagues. Councillor Runciman.
Sorry, it's worth checking it's on the agenda because I'm not sure it is. One sat yesterday, one sets tomorrow. I'm not sure it's on the agenda, and I will check.
Thank you very much. I say it's on the agenda for the parishes that I kind of sit on. I don't know whether we've got any interest, but we've certainly made it known. Councillor Fisher.
I don't know whether the YLCA will be consulting Stockton Forest, of course, because they're not a member of the YLCA, so I shall.
Yeah, I suspect they won't in that case.
In that case, I'd better get in touch with them and have a word with them and let them know.
Yeah.
Can I make
Joe.
a bureaucrat's suggestion to the administration, which is when there is a vacancy for parish councillor, the city sends out an information notice to parish councillors, because it's much easier for the parish council to distribute a note, because they don't have to do anything with it, than it is for them to be having to decide how we are going to communicate with our members.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. And I'm sure Lindsay heard that. Sorry, did you comment?
All I was going to say,
Microphone.
sorry.
Okay.
As far as I was aware, that the notice has gone out because it was raised, it was on the agenda for our recent parish council meeting and was discussed there.
Yeah.
The chairman encouraged applicants.
Good. I mean, without wanting to cast any aspersions on parish councils or chairs thereof, or clerks, sometimes the situation is that clerks and or chairs aren't always quick to respond to things like this. So we may well have had a situation where that's happened, but I wouldn't want to kind of cast any aspersions on any particular parish clerk or chair. Richard, you were waving your hand spuriously at me. Oh, okay. All I've got on this thing, I can't see Lindsay's face now because there's just a. Oh, there we go. Lindsay, I can now see. Please do come in.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to pick up on the point that Councillor Fisher made. YLCA do include non-member councils in this type of process. So regardless of whether they're a member or not, they will be included in this ballot.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Lindsay. Okay, I think we've aired that well enough. Moving on to the next item, which is the minutes of the assessment subcommittee that was held on the 23rd of July. So those of you that were present at that, if I can have your nod that it was an accurate record. I'm looking at Councillors Fisher and Pavlovic and Chambers. Yeah, okay, that's fine. So we can sign those ones off as well. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. That brings us on to our next item, which is item number 5, urgent business. I haven't got any items of urgent business to discuss this afternoon, which then takes us on to item number 6, which is public participation. And we have no registered speakers this afternoon. So your timekeeping, Councillor Woolby, could well be met, so you should be okay on that one. Which brings us on to our next item, which is Parish Council visits, and it's item number 7. So you will recall, members, that at the last meeting, myself and Councillor Warby, as the Vice Chair, were tasked with meeting with Lindsay just to talk about how we can put together a programme that encourages parish council visits and also the uptake of engagement with parish councils. I had intended to come back and encourage those colleagues that don't have wards that have parishes, that there is a 3-mile boundary. So if you live within 3 miles of a parish council and you don't have a parish council in where you live, that potentially you could get involved in a parish council that way. However, we did meet with Lindsay, and rather than me just relaying what Lindsay had said, I'm going to let Lindsay tell you herself in a sense what happened in that meeting. But I think it's really good and it's going to be really positive but it's not going to involve parish council visits as such. But Lindsay will fill you in. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. So yes, it was a really, really productive meeting that we had. I think it was the 5th of August when we met, Councillor Rowley. It was a really good discussion. And we talked about how we can improve and strengthen the links that we have with parishes in respect, particularly around standards and code of conduct issues. We've certainly got some ideas that we're going to explore. I mean, there's a lot of work that already happens with parish councils. We have a parish council liaison committee with which Councillor Pavlovic sits on. I have attended that a few times and spoken to parishes about, you know, various matters. But we want to really strengthen the work that we do with parishes around cultures, behaviour, standards, code of conduct. Just before I come on to the main topic that we explored, I just wanted to update it and let you know that one of the independent members one of the independent persons and the other Deputy Monitoring Officer, Francis, recently attended a meeting of a town council. And I think the feedback I've had from that is that that was incredibly productive and very helpful. And I think Francis is really keen that they can continue and build on that and draw up a plan of visits to parish councils, just perhaps targeting the ones where there are particular issues, the larger town parish councils, to talk specifically about standards related matters. But turning to the discussion that Councillor Rowley and I had, we talked about the fact that there is an awful lot of the area of the City of York which isn't parished. Obviously we have 31 parishes in existence currently, and we are well overdue a community governance review of the parishes in the City of York. So community governance reviews are carried out by the principal authority, which in this case is the City of York. And the community governance review acts pretty much in the same way that the local government boundary commission would work if it came in to do a review of City of York Council, in that the City of York Council can amend boundaries and warding patterns and election patterns and the size of parish councils. They can group, abolish, and importantly, they can establish new parish councils. So pretty much the full remit in terms of the establishment and the structure of parish councils within the area sits with City of York Council. There is a recommendation about how frequently we should do community governance reviews of our parishes, and we are well past the time that we should have undertaken a review. Certainly, if I've discussed these matters with Councillor Pavlovic, who I think fair to say is very keen on community governance review for York, discussed with Councillor Pavlovic and other executive members. And I think the intention is there that we want to bring something to council as soon as we can, get it to council to seek council's approval to start a community governance review. It is a council decision. You know, council hold that power in terms of managing and controlling that community governance review. So alongside the community governance review, there's an awful lot that we need to be doing in terms of consulting. There is statutory consultation process within this community governance review. So we will use that to consult and work with parish councils, to work with YLCA and other partners as well, to get views on how parishes should be structured and set up, and whether the unparished areas of the city should be parished, whether the existing parishes are in the right format that they are now. I know certainly there are some parishes asking to be grouped because they feel that they're too small to continue as standalone councils. We will look at matters such as the size of councils. So do councils struggle to recruit new members? Do they have contested elections? Do they have to co-opt members? All that kind of thing can be looked at. So what we will look to do is, when we're consulting with parishes, we will work alongside them. And in a sense, we'll kind of resetting how we work with parishes, how we engage with them, and establish a new parish structure. And alongside that, we can do some work with the parishes around standards, code of conduct, behaviours, all that kind of cultural aspect of how the parishes work. So I think it's a big piece of work. Community governance review is a massive piece of work. If we start that, within the next few months, then realistically we're looking at probably implementation for the next set of all-out elections in 2027. But I think it's a really good opportunity for us to link it with the work that joint standards are doing, and to jump in on the back of that engagement and that consultation and make sure that we're working together with the parishes to get some really good structures and some really good processes in place. So that's kind of where our discussion went to. I think, Councillor Rowley, is that fair to say? That's kind of where we ended up.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of the process, I can't give any timelines because, as I said, this kind of sits with council to determine that they're going to do a community governance review. But if it does, if council does give approval for that, then I think we'd be looking to get a working group set up, which would manage the process. Essentially, council would be setting the terms of reference for the review, and I would write those terms of reference to be as flexible and as wide as possible. Because that's what allows you to do what you want to do. So if we keep that too tight, then we lose the flexibility. So we'll write a very, very wide remit of terms of reference, encompassing the whole of the City of York area, to look at the parish structure within it. And as I said, look to set up a working group that would manage that process, take it through all the necessary statutory and non-statutory steps, manage all the consultations, and kind of pull together at some point, about a year after we start is the expectation, some recommendations about where we think this should go. So I think, is that a fair summary, Councillor, of the?
Yeah, no, I think that's very fair assessment of the meeting that we had. I'm happy to open it up to members to question you. I think I would probably just say to members that any implementation of any recommendations, and I think Lindsay alluded to this a moment ago, nothing would change until the end of the current administrative kind of 4-year cycle. So the idea is that all the changes would be implemented in 2027. And none of us can second guess what those changes may or may not be. Am I right in thinking that the process, and I'm looking at Councillor Pavlovic as well, is that it would have to go to executive, and then once executive had approved it, it goes to council, or would it just be a straight? What's the process for Lindsay or Councillor Pavlovic?
Lindsay.
It is a council function, Councillor Rowley, therefore it wouldn't be appropriate for it to go to executive.
Right, okay.
Having said that, though, as the leader of the council is the portfolio holder with responsibility for that area, then of course there'd be discussions with her as portfolio holder, and we would need to engage with the executive in terms of the things that we need to talk about, the resourcing of this and the management of it. But essentially it is a council decision, so it's not something that would go to executive to be referred to council. It would just go purely to the council. And in a moment I'm going to bring Councillor Pavlovic in, but again, just we're looking at a 12-month period, aren't we, of this review? It's yes. So the timescale is once council has agreed its terms of reference, that is, the clock starts ticking at that point. And from that point, there is 12 months to then bring back and agree the final order. Having said that, once we've agreed the final order, that doesn't mean that it's implemented at that point, because the order will stipulate the implementation date for any changes that the review is bringing in. You're absolutely correct. I think the correct implementation date will be the May 2027. Implementation could be earlier. However, these things do take time. There's a lot of consultation to be undertaken. We want to get it right before we start the clock ticking. If there are new parish councils being established, that is quite a lengthy process. I've done that before. It's a big task, so that takes time. You would always establish a new parish council on the 1st of April in the year that the order is taking effect. But also, importantly, there will be a knock-on effect on elections. And so if we're changing the size of parish councils, if we're merging or setting up new ones, we will have to run elections. We can do that outside of the normal election cycle. but there will be a considerable cost to the parishes in
Mhm,
doing that.
mhm.
So I think, given that we're almost at the end of, come to the end of 2024, if we add in a year, for the actual process and then a bit of time either side to get things in place, then I think 2027, May 2027 is probably a reasonable time frame for this process.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Pavlovic.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Lindsay. Very accurate assessment. So as you've heard, we essentially have to have a community governance review, in as much as two parish councils have asked to merge, and therefore it has to take place. The question is about how big is the scope.
Sure.
But one question I wanted to ask you, Lindsay, is if we undertake a review now, shortly, during this administrative cycle, and we see significant levels of development, as you know, the local plan is not far from adoption. Some of those settlements are quite significant. 900 homes, 1,000 homes, 1,500 homes, in one case, 3,500 homes, I believe, Elvington. Almost essentially parishes in and of themselves. What happens when those developments are built out? Would you have to have another review, or or would you look to incorporate those within existing parishes, bearing in mind that they are going to take a number of years to actually develop out?
So through you, Chair, yes, actually, Councillor Pavlovic, that's a really relevant point, and one that we'll need to factor into the process, the CGR process, because if we follow the process that the Local Government Boundary Commission takes, it would always ask for 5-year projections of development within the area. So I think if we adopt the same principles, it would be for the working group to look at in its evidence gathering, looking at those types of predictions about where the house building is going to be, where the settlements are going to increase, where parish councils are going to massively increase in size, where there might need to be some tweaks of boundaries. So I think it's perfectly reasonable that we should be taking that evidence into the community governance review that we're hopefully going to undertake in the next couple of years. But certainly the council can do a community governance review at any stage that it feels it needs to. You would normally not do one within 2 years of a review having been completed, but you can. So you wouldn't normally, but council can resolve to do another review if it felt that it was necessary. But I would say probably, we'll probably encapsulate most of the evidence that's required to mitigate needing another review quite so quickly. But it may well be that, if there are any significant changes within a fairly short timeframe that haven't been accounted for, then yes, there may well be an opportunity to do another review. But you wouldn't do a full-scale review of the whole city. You would limit it to that specific area, that specific parish, or that specific ward. So yeah, sorry, not a very clear answer, but we were trying to include all of that evidence and get a pattern of where the house building is going to be, so that we get a picture. And that's why I always run community governance reviews with a working group and with an officer project group who bring in the expertise from all the relevant departments. So the GIS team, the planning policy team, the finance team for council tax purposes, the legal team for the orders, everyone in the council who has the skills and the necessary expertise, we bring them on board to make sure that we get all the evidence and do everything absolutely, correctly, and with everything that everything taken into account that we need to take into account.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Rosa, you go first, and then Councillor Runciman.
Just to say that all that work on the structure, I think, is really important. But with Francis, that I visited a town council for a meeting, and I think it's also important in terms of working out how to strengthen and support those values that underpin the work of parish councils, that those relationships and the the modelling, I suppose, of how effective councils work and how people work effectively together is also important. And I think something that the council visits could help people with.
Good. Thank you very much. Councillor Runciman.
Quite a few comments, Chair, if I may. Firstly,
Please.
I couldn't get all of what was said, so I hope that Jane will give us a summary of it. But some of the things I am picking up, I think you said, or I think Lindsay said, about targeting parish councils with issues. I hope that if visits or collecting evidence is to happen, it will go also for the ones where there aren't issues,
Sure.
because those are the ones that are running well.
Sure.
And there's quite a lot of those. The others make a lot of noise, but those of us that are in parish councils that run well don't make any noise. We just get on with the job. So that's
That
important.
includes my 5.
The decision for whether there should be parish councils in other areas, I had thought needs to be by at least a majority, and I've forgotten the proportion now, of the residents. It's not a decision of the principal authority. So we need to be very careful to know that there's going to be a cost in there, which is going to be almost some sort of survey of local people to find out what people think. I think Councillor Pavlovic's point about new developments, I couldn't hear the answer, but he makes a very valid point, because some areas are going to grow enormously. And then the final comment I want to make is we need to remember that parish councillors are volunteers. They don't get paid, and there's only usually one paid employee who is usually part-time. So whatever anybody thinks, whatever is suggested has got to be in the capacity of that one person and the volunteers. And it is not a clone of the city council in any way, shape or form. And there are hundreds and thousands of hours of free support given to the city council by parish councils and to town council for absolutely nothing at all, because they are volunteers and they do what they can do to keep their areas in order.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring Lindsay back in, but before I do, I just want.
If Lindsay's coming back in, can she speak more slowly so I can hear what she's saying?
She's got that. She's smiling that she'll do that. But again, just so my understanding of both of the conversations that myself and Council will be had with Lindsay, and also the way in which Lindsay has presented it, is that there is a tremendous amount of consultation that will go on with parish councillors, and not only will there be plenty of consultation with parish councillors, but there'll be plenty of consultation where residents have an opportunity to give their thoughts as well. Ultimately, and I guess Lindsay can confirm this, ultimately the recommendations will be the recommendations, and council will or will not confirm those recommendations at full council. But I think the key to this being successful is probably a huge consultation work. I say not just with parish councils, but with residents, with their opportunities to give their thoughts and their feedback. And the other answer, just to save Lindsay repeating what she said, the community governance reviews have to happen every, I think it's 4 or 5 years, which is why we have to do one now. 10 years, thank you, Councillor Pavlik. So we have to do one now, but it is possible for a CGR to take place in a more localized area. So if a development had grown after a couple of years of the last CGR, the council could decide to do a CGR just in that geographical area to take into account what we all hope will be a successful local plan implementation and the developments that go with that. Lindsay, I'm going to give you the opportunity to come back slowly.
Yes.
So Councillor Runciman can hear your answers.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, Councillor Runciman. My voice is very croaky, so I'm struggling with speaking. So apologies if I'm gabbling a bit. In terms of setting up new parish councils, it is a full council decision, and it will just be a normal majority decision of council if that is the recommendation of the working group that is running the CGR process. Having said that, the chair is absolutely correct in that there will be a very, very robust and lengthy consultation process with all the relevant areas, with the residents. That's why the communications team will be a critical part of the project group. And we will look to do the consultations in a variety of ways. I know some people like to come to public meetings. You know, I've done lots of public meetings in drafty church halls on Saturday mornings to talk through community governance review plans with residents. So we can do that in person consultation. We will do online surveys because a lot of people do like to do it that way as well. So we will do whatever we can to make sure that we reach that consultation into as many people as we possibly can. You're absolutely right, Councillor Runciman, the financial implications of a new parish council can be quite significant. And I think having set up parish councils in other areas, it's always a bit of a surprise to local residents when they get their council tax bill in March and see that they've got a new charge for the new parish council. Because however much we impress on people that there will be a cost, it still comes a little bit of a shock. So I think it's really important that we get that. That's why we'll have finance colleagues as part of the working group, that we understand what the financial implications are likely to be, and that we make sure we communicate them clearly and loudly with residents, so that if they do say that they want a parish council, then they need to understand that that comes at a cost. It absolutely does, because the parish council, parish councillors don't tend to get allowances, but there will be a clerk who will need a salary. There will be, you know, a need to buy equipment. There will be a need for a room for them to hold their meetings and other equipment and other resources. So it comes with a cost, and we will need to accurately, you know, get that message out. But also the benefits of a parish council, because parish councils can access funding that, you know, perhaps the City of York can't access for those residents in those areas. So we will need to do an awful lot of work with residents, with parish councillors, with other elected representatives, and with other interested parties, and we will certainly use our colleagues in the communications team to get their expert advice and help in reaching as many people as we can to do that.
I think Joe's the next one, but please, if you need to say anything, just raise your hand.
This is a comment, a narrow bureaucratic thing. If you look through the minutes and the hearings of this committee for the last couple of years, when I have heard them, and then with your experience go back 2 or 3 or 4 years, there's a question to ask of the review, which is, of all the problems that have come here from parish councils in the last 4 or 5 years, is the review going to address any of those? Can it address any of those? And if it can, it should. And I'm sure some of you could give a list by category of half a dozen reasons why there are problems. And once you've identified the reasons, you may not be able to do anything about it, but you can ask those that are carrying out, who are in the working party, could something be done about this kind of problem? And I think that starts very narrow. It's not about consulting everybody. It's when the thing goes bang, these are the problems that have occurred. Are there any of them can be minimized in future by a review?
Okay, I think that's kind of a rhetorical question, but a relevant question. Councillor Runciman.
Answer, Joe, and you're right to raise it, because I've been doing standards for some time. The trouble is that very often the contentious matters come up via 1 or 2 individuals. And if those 1 or 2 individuals are legitimately elected to that parish council, town council, even a city council, and that's the person the electorate wants, then no, you can't. You can take them off things. Maybe they only come to the main meeting, but you can't send them off to the South Seas or something, I'm afraid. So by all means, look at it. But you always come up against the finish line, and the finish line says they've been legitimately elected by the electorate in the right area, and therefore they must stay on.
There were some other issues as well, Chair, things about problems with choracy and problems about technical skills, which are not about the performance of individuals, it's about the ability of the parish council to perform. And is there anything to be done to backfill that difficulty in some situations? I give that as an example. I mean, there have been various things that have arrived here, and various things you know about it, both parish councillors and city councillors, and indeed officers of the city, where maybe something could be done, and if it could be, it should be included in a review. And I accept absolutely some things cannot be changed because that's the law.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Chambers.
Councillor Ronson made a very good point about the fact that,
As she often does.
a lot of the parish councillors have been elected, and like it or not, you're faced with that situation. What is the situation if a parish councillor has not been elected but has been adopted? Does that make a difference? Or co-opted, or whatever you call it?
Far as I know, it's the same. But it's a good question, Councillor Chambers, and it's something we need to get advice from CA or whoever on.
Yeah, so I'm gonna bring Lindsay back in, but if I can, I mean, it's good we've had this discussion around. I think the reality is the CGR it's a huge piece of work, as Lindsay has alluded to. There will be a tremendous amount of consultation. The terms of reference of that CGR will effectively be set by full council. So again, before it comes to full council, there'll be an awful lot of work done by a working group to make sure that we've covered off every area that we kind of need to cover off. But I would also suggest that it's probably a dynamic piece of work as well, in that if there are issues that come up, that they can certainly be addressed within the CGR. But all very valid points that you've made around the table. Does anybody have any other questions? Because if not, I'm going to give Lindsay the last word on this. Any more comments or questions? No, Lindsay, the last word is yours.
Thank you, Chair. So just to clarify on the process, I think what I would probably do is take a report to full council to establish the intention to undertake a community governance review and to set up the working group. And then, as you say, the working group can then spend some time getting the terms of reference right, looking at the scope and deciding what they want to do. And then that would then go back to full council to agree the terms of reference and effectively start the clock ticking.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So Lindsay, you won't have seen this, but Councillor Kent has trumped you because she wants to have the last word, or maybe not. Let's find out.
Sorry, Lindsay, no intention to trump at all. Can I just inquire about the cost, because you talked about intensive consultation and the council's in difficult financial circumstances. Do we have any cost estimates, or even just for the preliminary stage? It would be useful to know as part of the decision making.
Really good question. Lindsay?
We don't yet, Councillor Kent, but that is something that we will need to look at. And I would suggest that that's something that the working group, when it's looking at its scope and how it wants to run the review, should be looking at the likely costs. Certainly, it can be done cheaply, it can be done more expensively. We just need to get the balance right, because it's absolutely right that the cost of it will be the consultation. So we need to get that right. Sorry, Chair, can I just come back and just answer the councillor's question about co-opted members and their status?
Please do. Yeah.
Exactly the same as an elected member. There is no difference. They are co-opted and they have the same power and authority, and whether they're elected or co-opted, it doesn't make any difference. So they are councillors until they choose to resign, are disqualified, pass away, or any other reason that any elected councillor would step away from office. So
Good.
no difference at all with co-opted councillors.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. And I think I'm going to have the last word on this, actually. What I would say is the whole idea of a CGR, okay, is to increase engagement with the community. It's not about decreasing engagement. It's about increasing engagement. We want parish councils to work for all the right reasons. I mean, it's even possible within the CGR to look at the name of a parish council as part of the review. You know, does the word parish have a problem? There's lots of other terms that can be used. It's a really wide-ranging review, but the whole basis of the review is that it increases engagement with the community and not decreases it. So, Councillor Kent, you're absolutely right to challenge about the cost. There will be a cost, as with all of these things, but ultimately it's a piece of work that we're overdue. And one that will hopefully reap benefits in terms of our engagement with the community. Councillor Pavlovic.
I refuse to give you the last word.
We'll see.
Is there any prospect of being able to get any grant funding for running this type of consultation? Is there anything from government, mayoral combined authority, anybody else, just to defray some of the costs which, when a council is in financial restraint, let's put it that way, can be used to offset some of those costs?
Really good question, Lindsay. I'll leave you to answer that one.
I will certainly go with my begging bowl and see if we can get any potential funding. I'll speak to the LGA. I'll speak to the combined authority and see if there's any potential there. Unfortunately, we can't recharge back to the parishes. If we did a community governance review for one parish, we couldn't recharge that. That's just not permitted under the legislation. But we will explore any opportunity we can to get any external funding to help us with this work. Absolutely.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. You have had the last word. We're going to move on. What I want to do is just, because what I don't want to do is to come back after we've gone into a private session. So item number 8, review of our work plan. You have that in front of you, colleagues. And I am suggesting that what we do is just moving forward is that we have an update on the CGR just at every meeting, so we know where we are in terms of you know, what progress, if any, has been made. So I would like to add that to the work plan. Does any of my colleagues have any comments of what they'd like to see that's not on the work plan at the moment? No, so obviously the November meeting, we'll just slip in there, just a review of CGR. Okay, good. So moving on then to item number 9, which is the monitoring officer's report on the complaints that have been received. And colleagues, please, if you can keep your salmon pink papers away. Councillor Fisher is going to step out, and I suspect he won't be stepping back, given that we'll go private in a moment. So thank you, Councillor Fisher. Lindsay, if you can just take us through the open public list, please, or the public list.
Yes, I will, Chair. Just bear with me while I pull up the right agenda. So in terms of the open complaints, I think we are down to about 5 open complaints. So the first one, which is 2023/21, that is one that I am holding. I have received the draft investigation report that just came through to me, I think yesterday afternoon. I've signed that off. So that draft report will now go to the relevant parties, and we'll be looking to convene a subcommittee to hear that investigation. So that's 2023/21. The other 4, so 2024/06, that is one the other deputy monitoring officer is managing. It has been assessed and recommended to progress to investigation, and so that investigation will start very shortly. Similarly, with 2024/09, again, the deputy monitoring officer assessed it and recommended investigation, so that will be starting once an investigating officer has been identified and appointed. For 2024/12, again, that has been recommended to progress to investigation, so that process is about to start. And for 2024/14, that is a fairly new complaint. It is currently under assessment and the views of the independent person have been sought. So there'll be a further update on that one next time. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Lindsay. So, colleagues, if any of you want to ask any questions, again, clearly bearing in mind we're still in open session, do so. If not, we will reserve it to the private session. But anybody got any questions for the open session? No, that's fine. So, for those that have been watching, thank you for your time. And for those that will be watching in the future, thank you for your time. We are now going to go into a private session, which will mean that we can discuss these complaints in a more open nature. So, Richard.